Welcome, beloved listeners, to another inspiring episode of the Lounge Chair Podcast. I am your host, Melissa Parsons, and this episode is called Wipe Your Tears. It's Time to Shift. Today, we invite you to embark on a roadmap that leads to a journey of faith, hope, and transformation as we explore the powerful topic of shifting from tears to triumph. By diving into the comforting embrace of your faith, we can find strength and encouragement to overcome life's trials and emerge victorious. VocabularyToday.com definition of shifting. The word shifting describes something that is taking a new direction, either physically or in thought. If you've recently decided that the earth may be round, you're shifting from a flat earth viewpoint to a round earth one, right? So, in the midst of life's challenges, there are countless individuals facing difficult situations that threaten to rob them of their peace and joy. It is literally like pouring gasoline on an open wildfire. The potential for problems and pain is off the charts and unbearable. From the weight of financial burdens to the pain of broken relationships, coping with chronic illnesses, experiencing over the too high stress levels, job insecurity, and personal struggle. I am talking about these off the chart circumstances which can leave you feeling defeated and overwhelmed. When living in a fast paced and demanding world, it is imperative that we embrace the essence of our being and treasure each passing moment, as we all must embrace the true fact that time waits for no one. And in the blink of an eye, life can change drastically. The good news is when you place your hope in Jesus, your tears are never in vain because the God we serve, who is now, is also the God who is forevermore. That's why, no matter the situation you face, Jesus can turn your setbacks and sorrows into your setups for your good and his glory. Therefore, it is time for us to cherish every moment of our existence. No matter what you see, God holds the full plans of your lives. Cherishing and every moment not only allows us to appreciate the simple joys that surround us, but it also enables us to cultivate gratitude for the experiences and relationships that shape our lives. Whether it is through celebrating milestones, expressing love and kindness, or pursuing personal growth, cherishing every moment becomes a conscious choice that enrich our journey. Let us seize the present and extract the beauty in each passing moment, for it is through these treasured memories that we truly embrace life's wonders. However, it is in these moments that we must cling to our unwavering faith in God's promises. We can find comfort in knowing that we serve a God who is greater than any trial we may face. We have hope in the reassurance that joy and peace can be restored. He is a restorer, which brings us to point number one: God's promises and unchanging faithfulness. Our first step on this transformation journey is to turn our attention towards God's promises and his unchanging faithfulness. Remind yourself that God sees our every tear you shed, and he is ultimately aware of your struggles. Refer to Psalms 56:8, which says, "You have kept count of my tossings, but my put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book?" Meditate on how these verses affirms God's intimate involvement in your lives, providing comfort and assurance that we are never alone in our trials. In the midst of our trials and hardships, it is essential to remember that God is intimately involved in our lives. He sees every tear that falls, hears every desperate plea, and understands every ache in our hearts. His presence brings comfort and reassurance that we are never alone in our struggles. Even when the world feels dark and overwhelming, we can find solace in the knowledge that God is right there with us, walking beside us every step of the way. His love and guidance offers us the strength and perseverance and the hope that our trials will not define us. In times of uncertainty, let's hold on to the truth that God's intimate involvement in our lives brings immeasurable comfort and the assurance that we are never alone. It is essential to hold on to the truth that God's involvement in our lives is intimate and profound. He is not a distant and dispatched deity, but rather a loving and caring father who is intimately um, he's just near, he's near and dear to our struggles. In the moments when we feel overwhelmed and alone, God's comforting presence remind us that he is walking alongside us, ready to provide his strength. We can find assurance in the scriptures such as Isaiah 41:10, which promises that God is with us, strengthening and upholding us through challenging times. It is through his it is through him that we can find peace, comfort, and the unwavering assurance that we are never alone in our trials. Which brings us to point number 2, the power of shifting our perspective. The power of shifting our perspective is a transformative force that allows us to rise above our circumstances and to see them from a new light. When we face challenges or difficult situations, our natural inclination may be, to focus on the negatives, dwell on the pain, or feel overwhelmed by the weight of our struggles, right? However, by intentionally shifting our perspective, we can find hope, strength, and a renewed sense of purpose in the midst of adversity. It's possible. It really is. Shifting our perspective involves 2 things. One, stepping back and looking at our situation from a higher vantage point. 2, it requires us to reframe our thoughts and choose to focus on the possibilities rather than the limitations. By doing so, we open ourselves up to new insights, fresh situations, and a greater understanding of God's faithfulness. Another way to shift our perspective is through gratitude. When we intentionally act, or when we intentionally count our blessings and focus on the good things in our lives, no matter how small they may seem, we begin to see that there is still much to be thankful for. Gratitude opens a doorway to our hearts to recognize the presence of God's goodness and provision, even in the midst of challenges. Another powerful way is through the practice of mindfulness. Everybody know we have to be very mindful. By intentionally being present in the moment and fully aware of our thoughts and feelings and surroundings, we can break free from negative thought patterns and gain insight into the bigger picture. Mindfulness helps us to detach from our circumstances and see them as temporary rather than all consuming. Additionally, shifting our perspective involves aligning our thoughts with God's truth, right? His word. Instead of dwelling on fear, doubt, or discouragement, we can choose to meditate on God's promises found in scriptures. By immersing ourselves in his word and declaring his truth over our lives, we invite his perspective to transform our own. Ultimately, the power lies in recognizing that we have a choice, and when we view and respond to our circumstances. We must stop trying to control everything and everyone. While we may not always have control over what happens to us, we do have control over how we interpret and navigate those situations. By intentionally shifting our perspective to align with God's truth, we invite His wisdom, His peace, and His joy to guide us through life's challenges. As we embrace the power of shifting our perspective, let us remember the words of Romans 12:2. Do not be, if I can talk, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of our mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. May we continually seek the transforming power of God's perspective in all areas of our lives, finding hope, strength, and renewed joy in the process. Finally, shifting from tears to triumph begins with a change in our perspective. Take a moment to reflect on the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis. Despite enduring betrayal and unjust circumstances, Joseph chose to shift his perspective from bitterness and self pity to trust God's plan. For me, I hit a low point in my life where I got tired of being sick and tired. You know, we all get there sometimes. Tired of crying, tired of no one understanding how I felt or what I was experiencing. As I was going through an emotional hurricane, tears began to stream down my face as I indulged in my own self pity. I had convinced myself that life had dealt me a cruel hand, but I was destined to be forever trapped in a cycle of disappointment and heartache. I replayed all my failures and missed opportunities, berating myself for not being stronger, smarter, or better. In my pity party, I deemed myself unworthy of love and success. And in that moment, I felt completely invisible in a world that seemed to pass me by. World, it doesn't stop. Time doesn't stop for anyone. As I strengthened my faith, I realized that my self worth was not contingent, hear me now, was not contingent on the world's validation, but on my identity as a beloved child of God. With newfound confidence, I stepped out of my pity party, embracing my purpose to love and serve others. And in doing so, I experienced the healing and the power that only God's unfailing love can bring. I had to take my mind off of my own self. We can find encouragement in Romans 8:28, which reminds us that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Explore the concept of viewing our tears as stepping stones towards growth and transformation, knowing that God works all things together for our ultimate good. Which brings us to point number 3, the power of worship and surrender. We can continue to draw closer to God and look for evidence of his faithfulness. As you intentionally pursue God, look for ways to worship him like David. The power of worship and surrender is profound and transformative when we engage in worship and align our hearts and minds with the truth of who God is. Acknowledging his sovereignty, goodness, and faithfulness. It is in the act of worship that our spirit connects deeply with the Spirit of God, allowing his presence to permeate every area of our lives. Worship provides us with a space to pour out our hearts before God, expressing our love and adoration and gratitude. It is the surrendering of ourselves, our burdens, and our desires as we shift our focus from our circumstances to the greatness of God. As we lift up his name in praise, we are reminded of his power, his wisdom, and his unfailing love. In the act of surrender, we relinquish control and submit ourselves to God's perfect plan. Surrender is not a sign of weakness, but rather an act of trust and obedience. It is an acknowledgement that God knows what is best for us and that his ways are higher than our own. In surrendering, we let go of our own limitations and open ourselves up to receiving God's his guidance and direction and provision. Worship and surrender works hand in hand. Through worship, we bring our hearts into alignment with God's truth. And through surrender, we relinquish our will to his. In this intimate place of surrender, we find peace, healing, and restoration. We lay down our burdens at the feet of Jesus and exchange them for his yoke, which is easy, and his burden, which is light. In Matthew 11:28-30. Furthermore, we can experience the presence of God in a tangible way as we draw near to him with a heart of worship. His spirit fills us, enables us to discern his voice, and grants us a deep sense of peace and contentment. In surrendering to his will and allowing him to take the lead in our lives, we position ourselves to receive his abundant blessings and experience his perfect peace that surpasses all understanding. Philippians 4:7. When we focus to embrace the power of worship and surrender, we invite God to work in and through us, transforming our hearts and renewing our minds. It is through his posture and through this posture of worship and surrender that our lives are aligned with God's purposes and we are transformed from the inside out. May we continually seek the power of worship and surrender, knowing that in surrendering to God, we find true freedom, joy, and fulfillment, right? In times of despair, worship becomes our weapon against against discouragement and doubt. Let's encourage everyone to worship by dedicating time in praise and thanksgiving, allowing the presence of God to transform their tears into a sweet offering. Find strength in worship and magnifying God's greatness, even in the midst of their pain. Which brings us to point number 4. Embracing God's plan and trusting his timing. Embracing God's plan and trusting his timing is an essential aspect of our faith journey. As humans, we often desire to have control over our lives, to orchestrate our plans according to our own timing. However, scripture reminds us that God's ways and timings are higher than ours. Isaiah 55:8-9. To embrace God's plan, we must first surrender our own desires and submit to his will. This involves acknowledging that God has a perfect and unique plan for each of our lives. How are we going to tell the creator what to do? I'm just saying. Even when his plan doesn't align with our own expectations or desires, we can trust that his plan is ultimately for our good in Jeremiah 29:11. Embracing God's plan requires an attitude of surrender, humility, and a willingness to align our lives with his purpose. We often find ourselves, eagerly waiting for God to fulfill his promises or answer our prayers. However, God's timing is perfect and deliberate. He knows what is best for us, and his timing is designed to bring about the greatest fulfillment and growth in our lives. As we wait, we can cultivate patience, endurance, and a deeper dependency of God. Trusting in him requires us to believe that he is faithful and that his plan will unfold at the perfect moment. In times of waiting, it can be challenging to maintain trust in God's timing. We may question why things aren't happening according to our timetable or why our prayers seems unanswered. However, we are called to trust that God's timing is purposeful and that he is working behind the scenes, orchestrating every detail for our ultimate good. Romans 8:28. We must have an unwavering faith in an intimate relationship with him. It involves seeking his wisdom through prayer and studying his word, allowing his truth to permeate our hearts and minds. It is also involved surrendering our own understanding and leaning on his understanding, according to Proverbs 3:5-6. Through all this, we find peace and contentment in knowing that he is in control. We can rest assured that his plan is far greater than we could ever imagine, and his timing is perfect. May we surrender our own plans, desires, and timetables to him. God's not on our time, he's outside of time, allowing his plan and timing to unfold in our lives and his glory and our ultimate fulfillment. Often the tears we shed are a result of unfulfilled expectations or delays in our desires. We must understand the importance of surrendering our plans and desires to God, trusting his divine timing and purpose. Reflect upon Jeremiah 29:11, which states, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in a future." I encourage you to hold on to this truth, knowing that God's plans are perfect and his timing is always impeccable. However, the key lies in seeking and maintaining a deep relationship with God, anchored in prayer and studying in his word. In times of waiting and uncertainty, we can draw strength and guidance from God's promises and examples of his faithfulness found throughout the Bible. Reflecting upon the stories of Abraham, Moses, David, and countless others who had to trust in God's timing despite challenging circumstances, can provide encouragement and inspiration. Additionally, we can find comfort in knowing that God sees the bigger picture. He's outside of time. He knows what is best for us, even when we cannot fully comprehend it all at that moment. We can trust that his timing is purposeful, designed to align with his perfect will, and bring forth the best possible income. Surrendering our own desires, expectations, and plans and placing them into his capable hands requires a heart of patience, perseverance, and a deep rooted confidence in his faithfulness. As we learn to let go and entrust our lives to him, we can find peace in knowing that he is working all things together for our good according to his timing and his purpose. Though it may not always be easy, we can find strength and hope in our relationship with him and the stories of his faithfulness throughout history and the knowledge that his ways are higher than our ways. Regardless of what we go through, God is an unchanging God. He's still the same God back then, same God right now. May we continually trust in his unfailing love and remain steadfast in our faith as we embrace his plan and trust in him. Which brings us to point number 5, finding strength in community and prayer. As believers, we are called to bear one another's burdens and support each other in times of trouble. We were not meant to do life alone, and no matter how much you think or say you can handle it, it's not under your control. It's not godly, and let me prove it. The phrase iron sharpens iron comes from Proverbs 27:17, which states, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. This metaphor illustrates the idea that just as iron can be refined and sharpened by coming into contact with another piece of iron, people can grow, develop, and become better through their interactions and relationship with others. When we surround ourselves with people who challenge us, inspire us, and hold us accountable, we have the opportunity to learn, to grow, and improve. Community can help us see our blind spots and offer different perspectives and encourages us to strive for excellence. We can sharpen our character skills and abilities. Too often, from the concept of iron sharpens iron, it is important to cultivate relationships that are built on trust, respect, and a mutual desire for growth. And this means seeking out individuals who have qualities, experiences, or insights that we can learn from, while also being willing to offer our own wisdom and support to others. Remember, everyone has a part to play. Dear friends, dear listeners, family, as we conclude this episode, let us remember that although tears may be a part of our journey, they do not define our destination. By shifting our focus from our circumstances to God's promises, by adjusting our perspective, surrendering our plans, and finding strength in community and prayer, we can experience a powerful transformation that takes us from tears to triumph. May you find renewed hope, faith, and courage to press on, knowing that God is with you every single step of the way. His words say he will never leave you nor forsaken you. That's his promise. That's his promise. Thank you for joining us on this inspiring episode of the Lounge Chair Podcast. And this content I hope this content has brought you encouragement and upliftment in your heart, and encourage you to share it with others who may also benefit from these words of hope and faith. And remember, wipe your tears, for it is time to shift embrace God's love and triumph. As always, we appreciate your support and your feedback. Stay tuned for more episodes filled with inspiration and encouragement. Until next time, may the peace of God that surpasses all understanding guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Please don't forget to subscribe. You can also find us on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Podfind, Spotify. WordPress is where our www dot theloungechair.com. Okay. So we appreciate you so much. Don't forget to follow. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to subscribe. Transforming mindsets one thought at a time. Bye-bye.